You are listening to the Think Brick Australia podcast. Think Brick Australia represents the clay, brick and paver manufacturers of Australia. Brick by brick, our podcast will discuss technical information and architectural case studies with special guests. I'm your host, Cathy Inglis, the Acting CEO of Think Brick Australia. Today I'm joined by Jason Mackenzie and we're continuing our discussion on clay pavements. So today we're going to talk about maintenance. So to start off, what are some prior considerations you need to make for maintenance of clay pavements?
Yeah, Cathy. So it's a good idea to retain a small stockpile of clay pavers, hopefully from the same batch, in order to keep a uniform look to your pavement, just in case of repairs that are needed, and to have the right extraction tools such as paver pullers, which are specifically designed to remove pavers. It's also important to keep in mind that pavers can be recycled. So it's really important to always find a chance to reuse pavers where possible.
So we've discussed in earlier episodes that the joints are very important in maintaining a pavement's performance. So how do you properly maintain the joints in pavements?
Yeah, so there's a few steps. But firstly, during the construction of a pavement surface, always make sure that the units possess a joint which can help manage size variation and are not butted against each other, since this can cause chipping of units. So the joints in pavers contain sand, which should be refilled whenever the level of sand falls below the level of the chamfers on the pavers. This is best accomplished during dry conditions by using methods such as dry bag jointing and jointing sand, which is repeatedly brushed across the joints until they are filled.
So Jason, as you mentioned, it's very important that the sand joints are maintained. So by topping them up regularly, so your pavement performs. There are situations where pavement surfaces begin to undulate. So what can be done to remedy this?
Yeah, so undulation of the pavement surfaces is usually due to uneven thicknesses of the bedding sand. And this can often be fixed by simply removing the pavers. This can be fixed by simply removing the pavers, which is a great advantage of pavers, where you don't need to actually rip up the whole pavement. And yeah, you can just remove the pavers in the undulated area, and then removing the bedding sand and reprofile the base course. Fresh bedding can be laid, and the original pavers can be relaid. It's important to keep in mind that this process does have specific tolerances, which will need to be adhered to, and I explained in our manual's TBA 01.
And that's one of the good things about clay pavers. They're small units, so you can fix small areas just by removing the pavers in that area if something's gone wrong, and level them up and put the same pavers back into that area again.
Exactly, yeah. And that's unfortunately a big thing that our companies do often, is they just put asphalt straight over it, which doesn't really utilize the full advantages of brick paving or segmental paving in general. So yeah, it's very easy to just simply pick up a paver, do what you need to do, and then simply relay it and maintain it.
Thanks for explaining that. So now the other thing that can happen to the pavers is that what we call shunting, and it's usually caused by traffic. So can you explain this a bit more?
So typically, if units are not allowed to reach a point where pavers become loose and can rotate, shunting really isn't an issue apart from aesthetics. As a rule of thumb, movements of 10 mils or less can be ignored in a structural context. A fix for this is lifting and relaying all or part of the surface. Again, bringing back that advantage of just being able to relay just part of your surface rather than all of it. There is no need to disturb the substructure if there is shunting, unless rutting is also present. Or rather, following removal of the pavers, it is sufficient to simply loosen and re-screed the bedding sand and then relay and compact the pavers.
So to prevent shunting, the best things to do are make sure your paver joints are completely filled with sand all of the time and that the joints are maintained, and also to make sure if you do have traffic that you use the right laying patterns to make sure the pavers don't move.
Yes, that's right.
Another issue is sometimes when water may even pump or surface from the joints of a segmental pavement. What causes this and how can it be fixed?
Yeah, so usually this is an indicator that the bedding sand drainage is not working, or just simply hasn't been installed at all. Or it could even mean that the bedding sand hasn't met the requirements which can be found in our design guide for pavements in residential accessways, roads, and commercial spaces. Lifting of the pavers may be necessary to inspect or identify what needs to be repaired with the draining system.
Another part of paver maintenance is cleaning. So can you give us some tips on this?
Yeah, so some precautions should be taken during the very early life of a pavement to avoid removing the joint sand during cleaning operations. In early stages, vacuum street sweepers and water jets should be avoided until the joints can interlock and also be naturally clogged with detritus. And this can take up to 3 months to occur.
because you need to be careful not to remove the sand from the joints when cleaning, or otherwise your pavers will move over time. Staining can be a common occurrence on most pavements. However, clay pavers with their colour for life, it's not as much of an issue, but you can prevent any staining occurring. So what's the best way to do this, Jason?
Yeah, so just like bricks, clay pavers can also get stains, but staining can be very easily prevented. Staining commonly occurs when pavements come into contact with materials such as leaves or any natural debris for extended periods of time. So it's really important to ensure that all rubbish and natural debris is regularly removed by sweeping, followed by hosing with water to ensure your pavement stays in best condition possible. Now, it's recommended to not solely use water to flush away the debris, as this can concentrate organic matter in low-lying areas, which will eventually stain. Also, it's important to take caution to ensure jointing sand is not removed while sweeping and hosing.
What are some tips or a procedure to follow to remove the stains?
So removal of the worst stains is always a priority. Stains can be removed with abrasives, detergents, or chemicals, and any residue or liquid runoff from this process must be immediately removed from the pavement surface or drained, as this can cause further issues.
And it's good to note that most stains can be removed with typical household detergents, and there's no need to use harsh chemicals or acids on clay pavements to remove any staining. So thanks for joining us today, Jason, and discussing the maintenance of clay pavements. Please stay tuned for the next episode, which is on permeable pavements.
Thanks, Cathy.
If you have enjoyed this podcast, please follow, rate and review our podcast. We are always looking for new ways to think brick. If you have an idea of what you'd like to hear about, there's a link in our show notes to let us know.